It was a quiet Tuesday evening when I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, my heart pounding, palms damp, as I prepared to confess something I never thought I'd say out loud. My husband, Daniel, sat across from me, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth, his blue eyes wide with disbelief. The words had been swirling in my head for months, and now they were out in the open, hanging in the air like a storm cloud. "I want to try being with a woman," I blurted out, my voice trembling. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel set his fork down carefully, his expression unreadable. "What?" he asked, his voice low and cautious, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "I've been thinking about it for a while now. I want to know what it would be like." Daniel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "Are you saying you want to cheat on me?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made me flinch. "No," I said quickly. "That's not what I mean. I love you, Daniel. I don't want to lose you or hurt you. It's just this curiosity. It's been eating at me, and I don't know how to make it go away." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his dark, slightly messy hair. "So what? You want me to just give you a pass to sleep with someone else?" The way he said it made me feel small, selfish. But wasn't it better to be honest about my feelings than to hide them? "I don't know," I admitted. I needed to tell you. I didn't want to keep this from you." For a long time, Daniel didn't say anything. The tension in the room was suffocating. Finally, he let out a long breath and shook his head. "I don't even know how to respond to that, Emma. Before we start, thank you for coming to my channel. Your participation is my happiness. Let me know where you are and what time it is now." "Okay, now let's get into the story. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I've been married to Daniel for 8 years. We live in a cozy house in suburban Illinois. Daniel works as a software engineer, and I'm a freelance graphic designer. We met in college where I was studying art and he was majoring in computer science. Daniel was the quiet, dependable type, steady as a rock, the kind of man you could build a life with. And that's exactly what I did. After graduation, we got married, bought a house, and settled into our roles. Daniel is everything a woman could want in a husband. Kind, loyal, hardworking, and he's never given me a reason to doubt his love. But as the years passed, our marriage began to feel routine, predictable. The excitement we once had slowly faded, replaced by the steady hum of everyday life. I didn't realize how much I missed that spark until I started noticing other women. Specifically, women who exuded confidence, strength, and an energy that was magnetic. At first, it was just a harmless curiosity, but over time it grew into something more. I tried to push the thoughts away, to bury them deep where they couldn't hurt anyone. But they kept coming back, stronger each time. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I had to tell Daniel. Later that night, after the initial shock of my confession had worn off, we sat on the couch together in tense silence. I could tell Daniel was struggling to find the right words. Finally, he turned to me and said, "If this is something you really want to do, I don't know. Maybe we can talk about it." I stared at him, stunned. "You'd actually be okay with that?" "I didn't say I'd be okay with it," he said quickly. "But I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I don't want to lose you, Emma. If this is something you need to do to be happy, I guess we can figure it out together." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. The last thing I wanted was to hurt him. Yet here he was trying to support me in the most selfless way imaginable. It made me feel even guiltier, but it also made me love him more. "Thank you," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "I don't deserve you, Daniel. You're my wife," he said simply. "We're in this together for better or worse." I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. I didn't know what the future held or if this crazy idea of mine would ruin everything we'd built together. All I knew was that I had opened a door I couldn't close, and there was no turning back now. The morning after my confession, I woke up to a strange mix of relief and dread. The weight of my secret had been lifted, but now it hung in the air between Daniel and me, heavy and awkward. We went about our usual routines, coffee, breakfast, and the quick goodbye before he left for work. But there was a tension that hadn't been there before. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the remnants of my toast, I found myself wondering what would happen next. Daniel had said we could figure it out together, but what did that even mean? Was he really okay with this? And if so, how would I even go about making it happen? 2 days later, I got my answer in the most unexpected way. It started with a phone call from a friend of mine, Rachel. She was one of those women who always knew everyone and everything. If there was a party, she was hosting it. If there was gossip, she had it. We hadn't talked in a while, but she called me out of the blue that afternoon. "Emma, you've been on my mind," she said in her usual breezy tone. "How are you?" I hesitated. Rachel and I weren't exactly close enough for me to spill my personal drama, but something told me she might be able to help. "I'm okay," I said carefully. "Just working through some stuff." "What kind of stuff?" Her voice perked up with interest. I bit my lip, debating how much to say. Finally, I decided to test the waters. "Have you ever wanted to try something new in your marriage? Something different?" There was a pause and then she laughed. "Oh, honey, who hasn't? Marriage gets boring after a while. What are we talking about here? Role play? A threesome?" "Not exactly," I said, lowering my voice even though I was alone in the house. "I've been curious about being with a woman." Rachel didn't miss a beat. "Well, that's interesting. And does Daniel know about this curiosity of yours?" "Yes," I admitted. "We've talked about it. He's trying to be supportive." "Wow," she said, clearly impressed. "Well, if you're serious about this, I might know someone." My heart skipped a beat. "You do?" "Yeah. Her name's Sophia. She's a yoga instructor at the studio I go to. Gorgeous, confident, and single. I don't know if she's into married women, but I could introduce you." The idea both excited and terrified me. "Are you sure she wouldn't think it's weird?" Rachel laughed again. "Sophia's the kind of woman who doesn't scare easily. Trust me." "Want me to set something up?" I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Okay." 3 days later, I found myself sitting at a coffee shop, nervously sipping a latte and waiting to meet Sophia. Rachel had arranged the whole thing, and while I appreciated her enthusiasm, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to do something I couldn't take back. When Sophia walked in, I spotted her immediately. She was tall, with long dark hair and a confident stride that turned heads as she made her way to my table. "Emma?" she asked, her voice smooth and warm. "Yes," I said, standing to shake her hand. "You must be Sophia." "That's me," she said, flashing a dazzling smile that made my stomach flutter. As we sat down, I couldn't help but notice how easy she was to talk to. She had a way of making me feel comfortable, like we'd known each other for years instead of minutes. We talked about everything, our lives, our interests, even a little about why we were meeting. "So, Rachel tells me you're curious," she said, leaning back in her chair and studying me with an amused expression. I felt my cheeks heat up. "I guess you could say that. And your husband's okay with this?" "He's trying to be." Sophia nodded, her smile never wavering. "Well, I respect the honesty. Most people wouldn't be brave enough to have this conversation, let alone act on it." Her words caught me off guard. Brave wasn't exactly how I would describe myself, but hearing it from her made me feel a little less like the villain in my own story. By the time we finished our coffee, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Sophia had agreed to meet again, and while nothing had happened yet, I could feel the pull of something inevitable. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "How's it going?" it read. I smiled to myself before typing a reply. "She's interesting." What I didn't say, what I couldn't say, was that for the first time in years I felt truly alive. The week after meeting Sophia felt like a blur. I went through my daily routine, designing graphics, running errands, and taking care of the house, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Every time I thought about her, a thrill coursed through me, equal parts excitement and guilt. Daniel seemed to notice the change in me. He didn't say much, but his glances lingered longer, and his questions about my day came with a curious edge. I tried my best to act normal, but it was impossible to fully mask what was happening inside me. When Sophia texted me 3 days after our coffee meeting, my heart skipped a beat. "Sophia. Hey Emma. How about a yoga session? I can show you a few things. It'll be fun." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say no, to end this before it went any further. But a bigger part of me, the part that craved something new, something different, couldn't resist. Me sure. When? The yoga studio wasn't far from my house, but it might as well have been a world away. As I parked my car and stepped inside, I felt out of place among the toned bodies and serene atmosphere. Sophia was waiting for me by the front desk, dressed in a fitted black tank top and yoga pants that showed off her sculpted physique. "Ready to work?" she asked, flashing that same dazzling smile. I nodded, feeling both nervous and exhilarated. "Let's do it." She led me to a quiet corner of the studio, away from most of the other patrons. Over the next hour, she guided me through a series of poses, her hands occasionally brushing against mine as she adjusted my form. Each touch sent a jolt of electricity through me, and I found myself hyper-aware of her presence, the warmth of her body, the smooth cadence of her voice. "Doing great, Emma," she said, her eyes locking onto mine as I struggled through a particularly challenging pose. "Thanks," I said, breathless. When we finished, she handed me a towel and a bottle of water. "You're a natural," she teased. I laughed, feeling a flush of pride. "I don't know about that, but thank you for the help." As we stood there cooling down, the air between us shifted. The casual banter faded, replaced by something heavier, more charged. "You're full of surprises," she said, her voice low. "Am I?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Yeah. Most people would never have the guts to do what you're doing." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just smiled. But the way she was looking at me, intense, almost hungry, made it clear that words weren't necessary. "Emma," she said softly, stepping closer. "If you want to stop this, now's the time to say so." I should have said yes. I should have thanked her for her time, walked out of that studio and never looked back. But instead I shook my head. "I don't want to stop," I whispered. She didn't hesitate. Before I could second-guess myself, her hand was on my waist, pulling me closer. Our lips met and everything else melted away. The studio, the people, even the weight of my guilt. All that mattered was the fire igniting between us. That kiss led to more, much more. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and I met whenever we could, always careful to keep our encounters discreet. At first, it felt like a dream, intoxicating, exhilarating, and utterly unreal. But as the initial thrill began to wear off, reality crept back in. Every time I came home to Daniel, the guilt hit me like a tidal wave. He didn't ask where I'd been or who I was with, but I could see the questions in his eyes. He trusted me, and I was betraying that trust in the worst way possible. One night, as we sat on the couch watching TV, Daniel turned to me and said, "You've been happier lately." I froze, unsure how to respond. "What do you mean?" "You just seem different," he said, studying me. "Lighter, I guess." "I'm glad." His words felt like a knife to my chest. I wanted to tell him the truth, to confess everything and beg for his forgiveness. But the thought of losing him, of destroying the life we'd built together, was too much to bear. So I smiled and said, "Thanks, Daniel. I think I'm just trying to take better care of myself." He nodded, satisfied with my answer, and turned back to the TV. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my world was teetering on the edge of collapse. I had crossed a line and there was no going back. The exhilaration of being with Sophia was like a drug, addictive and consuming. Every touch, every stolen moment felt like a secret world that belonged only to us. Yet, the deeper I fell into this affair, the more suffocating the weight of my choices became. At home, Daniel grew increasingly attentive, perhaps sensing the shift in me. He started leaving little notes on the fridge, offering to cook dinner, and asking me out on date nights. It was as if he was trying to rekindle the flame that I'd already allowed someone else to ignite. One evening, as I sat across from him in a cozy Italian restaurant, I felt an overwhelming pang of guilt. Daniel had spent the entire meal reminiscing about our early days together, reminding me of the man I'd fallen in love with. "Remember our first anniversary?" he asked, his blue eyes sparkling. "We barely had enough money for that weekend trip to the cabin, but we made it work." I forced a smile. "Of course. It was perfect. And now here we are," he said, reaching for my hand. "I know things haven't been as exciting lately, but I want you to know I'm trying, Emma. I really am." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. "I know, Daniel. I appreciate it. I really do." But the words felt hollow. A poor attempt to mask the truth that was tearing me apart. The next time I met Sophia, I couldn't keep the guilt from spilling out. We were at her apartment, a sleek modern space that felt worlds away from my quiet suburban life. As I sat on her couch, staring at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I finally broke down. "This is wrong," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." Sophia, who had been sitting beside me, leaned back and studied me with calm, piercing eyes. "What's wrong, Emma?" "Everything," I admitted, burying my face in my hands. "I love my husband, Sophia. He doesn't deserve this. I never should have." "I never said he did," Sophia replied, her tone even. "But you're here for a reason, aren't you?" I looked up at her, my eyes filled with unshed tears. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're exploring a part of yourself you've ignored for too long. That's not something to feel guilty about." Her words were soothing, but they didn't erase the ache in my chest. A week later, Daniel surprised me with a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods, just like the one we'd visited on our first anniversary. I could see how much effort he'd put into making it special, stocking the fridge with my favorite snacks, planning hikes, even bringing along a bottle of the wine we'd shared all those years ago. As we sat by the fire that evening, sipping wine and watching the flames dance, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Maybe this didn't have to end in disaster. "I want to make this work, Emma," Daniel said, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes. You're the most important thing in my life." Tears streamed down my face as I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. I wanted to believe we could fix this, but deep down I knew the damage had already been done. Despite my attempts to distance myself from Sophia, the pull between us was too strong to resist. We continued meeting in secret, each encounter leaving me more torn than the last. It wasn't just the physical connection that kept drawing me back. It was the way she made me feel alive, seen, and desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. But secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully you try to hide them. Thank you for listening to the story so far. Your encouragement means a lot to me. Please comment and share your thoughts here. I love you and I am so grateful to have you on this journey with me to explore the story further. It was a crisp Saturday morning when everything came crashing down. I had just returned home from another secret meeting with Sophia, my heart still racing from the thrill of being with her. As I stepped through the front door, I expected to find Daniel in his usual spot on the couch, engrossed in a book or a TV show. Instead, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale and his hands clenched into fists. "Daniel," I called, my voice trembling. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up slowly, his eyes locked on mine. There was a coldness in his gaze that I had never seen before, and it sent a chill down my spine. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. I froze, my mind racing for an excuse. I went for a walk. Just needed some fresh air." Daniel's jaw tightened, and he shook his head. "Don't lie to me, Emma. I know where you were." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, unlocking it with a few quick taps. Then he turned the screen toward me and my stomach dropped. It was a photo of me and Sophia, taken just an hour earlier. We were standing outside her apartment, her hand resting on my arm as we said goodbye. The intimacy in the photo was undeniable. "I followed you," Daniel said, his voice breaking. I didn't want to believe it, but I had to know. And now I do. Tears streamed down my face as I stood there, helpless. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," he said, his voice rising. "You lied to me, Emma. You betrayed me. How long has this been going on?" I couldn't bring myself to answer. The truth was too painful, too damning. "That's what I thought," he said bitterly. "For weeks, I've been trying to figure out what was going on with you. I thought maybe you were stressed or unhappy or... I don't know. But this is so much worse than anything I could have imagined." I reached out to him, but he stepped back, his expression hardening. "Don't," he said. "Just don't. Please, Daniel," I begged, my voice breaking. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" he snapped. "That you've been cheating on me? That you've been lying to me for weeks? What could you possibly say that would make this okay?" I had no answer. The weight of my choices crashed down on me, and I felt like I was drowning in guilt and regret. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. his frustration and pain palpable. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Emma. The woman I married would never do something like this." His words cut deeper than anything else. I had shattered the trust we'd built over a decade, and there was no way to piece it back together. That night, Daniel slept on the couch, and I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt empty even though we were both still there. The silence was suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had destroyed everything. The next morning, I woke up to find Daniel packing a suitcase. My heart raced as I watched him throw clothes into the bag, his movements sharp and deliberate. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need some space," he said, not looking at me. "I can't be here right now. I can't look at you." Tears streamed down my face as I stood there, helpless. "Daniel, please. Don't go. We can fix this." He stopped packing and turned to me. His eyes filled with a mixture of anger and pain. "Fix this? How, Emma? How do we fix this? You lied to me. You cheated on me. You broke our marriage." "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "But I love you, Daniel. I don't want to lose you." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I love you too, Emma. But I don't know if that's enough anymore." With that, he zipped up his suitcase and walked out the door, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. The sound of his car starting and driving away echoed in my ears, and I felt like my world was crumbling around me. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Daniel and I barely spoke, and when we did, our conversations were brief and strained. I cut off all contact with Sophia, deleting her number and blocking her on every platform. It was the least I could do, though it felt like too little, too late. Rachel, who had unknowingly facilitated the affair, called me after hearing the rumors. "Emma, what happened?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I messed up," I admitted. "I don't know if I can fix it." She sighed. "Look, I don't condone what you did, but if Daniel's willing to give you another chance, you need to fight for it. Don't give up." Her words stuck with me. I couldn't give up. Not on Daniel, not on our marriage, and not on myself. One evening, about 2 weeks after Daniel had caught me, he came home with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "Can we talk?" he asked, setting them on the counter. "Of course," I said, my heart pounding. We sat at the dining table, the wine untouched between us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About us. About what happened. About what we've been through." I braced myself, unsure of what was coming. "I'm angry, Emma," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I'm hurt. But I also know that I love you, and I don't want to throw away everything we've built together." Tears streamed down my face as I listened. "I love you too, Daniel. More than anything." He held up a hand. "That being said, this isn't going to be easy. If we're going to make this work, we need counseling, both together and individually. And I need complete honesty from you, no matter how hard it is." "I'll do whatever it takes," I promised. He nodded, though his expression remained serious. "One more thing. If I ever catch you lying to me again, it's over. No second chances. Understood?" "Understood," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. Rebuilding our marriage was a slow, painful process. Counseling sessions forced us to confront our deepest fears and insecurities, and there were days when it felt like we were making no progress at all. But little by little, we began to heal. Time passed, and day by day, week by week, Daniel and I gradually found our way back to balance in our lives. The process of healing wasn't easy. It required patience, honesty, and above all, commitment from both of us. We attended marriage counseling sessions, where we learned to listen to each other, share our pain, and rebuild the trust that had been lost. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, Daniel and I sat on the couch, quietly listening to the rain tapping against the window. The air in the room was heavy, but it was also filled with hope. "Do you think we'll be okay?" I asked, my voice soft and filled with worry. Daniel looked at me, his eyes gentler than they had been in months. "I don't know, Emma, but I know that I love you and I want to try. We've been through so much together, and I don't want to throw it all away because of one mistake." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you too, Daniel, and I promise I'll do everything to earn your forgiveness." Daniel smiled, a small but tender smile. "We'll get through this, Emma. one day at a time. Over the following months, we continued to work hard to rebuild our relationship. I learned to be more honest with myself and with Daniel, and he learned to open up and share his feelings. We spent more time together, rediscovering the happy moments we had once taken for granted. One day, as we were walking in the park, Daniel suddenly stopped and took my hand. "Emma," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I know the past can't be changed, but I believe we can build a better future. I love you and I want to be with you no matter what." My heart felt like it was bursting. "I love you too, Daniel, and I promise I'll never let you down again." Our life never returned to what it was before, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. We learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about the constant effort to understand and accept each other. We had faced challenges and now we were stronger than ever. My story doesn't have a perfect ending, but it has a hopeful one. Daniel and I learned that love isn't about avoiding mistakes, but about how we face and overcome them. We still have work to do, but now we know we can do it together. And sometimes that's all we need. And that's it for today's story. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and share your feelings. Did you relate to any of the characters? Or if you were in their shoes, what decisions would you make? I'd love to hear from all of you. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, hit one. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.